I'm Nathaniel C.T. Jackson. I run AnyCameraWillDo with James and Nick. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. I know the weather's pretty horrible, so I really appreciate it. First up, we're going to have a chat to Marc Furmie and Kieran Fowler about Terminus. So hold on a second, we'll throw on a trailer and put the guys up. All right, so we got Marc Furmie, the writer-director of Terminus, and Kieran Fowler, the director of photography for Terminus. So one more round of applause. Thank you very much, guys. Take it away.
Thanks, everyone. Firstly, thanks, everyone, for coming tonight. We didn't know if anyone would turn up, but yeah, we see some familiar faces out there, and definitely good to see you guys. To cut to the chase, I guess, you know, the teaser doesn't really give you too much of an indication of what the story of Terminus is about, so I'll fill you in on that. Essentially, it's about a small-town mechanic who discovers a meteorite that contains an organism that has some special abilities, and he develops a symbiotic relationship with this organism that then inspires him to build something he believes is connected to the fate of mankind. His daughter, she thinks he's a nutcase, and she's struggling to kind of pull her father back to a place of sanity. And the government, an unknown government agency, are after this thing as well, with the intention of using it as a bioweapon. So it's about all the lives that are interconnected with the discovery of this thing and how they're affected and torn apart, and ultimately the fate of mankind plays a part in that too. So that's Terminus in a nutshell. Production-wise, we conceived the idea, Cheyenne Zheng, the co-writer, and I conceived the idea a few years ago, but originally it was a much larger scale project that was probably far too expensive to ever make as an independent Australian film. And it involved the lead character, David Chamberlain, being a nuclear physicist, trying to create a solution for the end of the world. So in 2012, I met up with Shana Best, the director of Gabriel, who's a good friend of mine, and he told me about a film fund that he was putting together to support genre films. And he asked me if I had any low-budget ideas. I pitched him Terminus, you know, in my naivety, thinking that was a low-budget concept, but it wasn't. And fast forward, you know, a year later, we'd stripped down the story to what it is now, and I think, you know, a much better incarnation of it. Brought on producer Tim Maddox, and we got the green light to make the film for a very limited budget. I can't say the exact figure, but it was challenging, to say the least. And we set out to make the film, and we shot for about 30 days, if you include the 2 days we did pickups. Actually with quite a good crew, like more sizable than your average indie Australian film. So I think we did have a great degree of support, especially considering that around that time there were a lot of, you know, American features being shot in Sydney, and the crew was scarce, but we found this window of time after Unbroken had finished shooting and Mad Max had finished shooting, and, you know, a bunch of crew members with nothing to do for the month of December. Shot through December, took a break for Christmas, then came back in January and went out to the Blue Mountains. The film is set in the United States. Primarily, that was a commercial choice by the investors to kind of give the film as much market potential as possible, whether you agree with that or not, for better or worse. That was their thinking behind it. And, we had to work very hard to get, convincing American accents, had a very good dialect coach on board. She's over there, Barbara Hastings. And, really capturing a look and feel that was distinctly American, so finding vehicles and particular locations. We went out to near Lithgow to a place called Portland, which is a small town in a valley. It's surrounded by pine trees, and as you know, in Australia it's very hard to point a camera anywhere without seeing a gum tree. Yeah. So we had to search very hard to get pine trees. But that as soon as you saw them in the background, it felt distinctly American. As soon as you had like a Ford Mustang in there, all these elements, and then the accents and people's wardrobe, all of that contributed to giving it that atmosphere. Yeah, Kieran Fowler is the cinematographer behind Terminus, and him and I worked very, very closely to achieve a distinct look that was, inspired by the films of the 1970s, particularly Close Encounters of the Third Kind and The Deer Hunter especially, because the film has kind of a political message regarding America's foreign affairs. A couple of the characters are actually military veterans, amputees, and that played a very strong role, so that hence The Deer Hunter being a strong influence. So we shot using anamorphic lenses.
Yeah, I mean that really goes back to the 70s films and trying to throw back to all those films we were referencing. All the films we were really looking at and sort of referencing, from sci-fi to all things like Alien and E.T. and stuff, just had this distinct anamorphic look, which is also from the flares, but also the quality of the glass just gives you this sort of, I don't know, it's a slightly odd sort of texture to the image, and that's sort of why we went in that direction. We thought, well, going with Terminus's themes, which was sort of, about this town that's sort of down and out, and it's all about hope and stuff. And we thought, well, there's a lot of grit and grunge to this sort of these themes that we can add, and I think that the anamorphics really helped us with that. But yeah, we tested quite a few to get the look, and we found a few that really worked, and was sort of like they were used on actually some of the films that we really loved, like E.T. and stuff like that.
Yeah. Some of the glass was from some of those films, the actual glass, because they repackaged the lenses. Yeah, and we shot on the Alexa camera. We didn't shoot 4K. We shot 2K.
Yeah, I think it was like 2.5 anamorphic at that point. Straight to ProRes for all those people that are sort of camera savvy. But yeah, that was sort of a choice that Mark and I decided to use, because previous to this film we'd shot on Alexa before, and we both loved that camera. I love it. It's a camera I can basically pick up and I know what to expect. And especially with a film like this, it was hard to see in the trailer with the lights on the screen, but there's a lot of different colour palettes and different colour tonalities, especially in the small town. We've sort of gone with these urban sort of sodium and mercury greens and oranges. And I find out of the digital cameras that I've shot with, the Alexa sort of renders these sort of offbeat colours the best. It may not have as many Ks as other cameras will, but I think the colour choice, especially for this film, was perfect. That's why we went Alexa.
I might show a clip. One of the things with Terminus is it's a science fiction drama. So we worked very hard to kind of establish our characters, and I guess in that sense you could probably call it a slow burn. It doesn't have the immediate kick in the ass that a lot of modern films have, so it feels nostalgic. So this is an example.
Por favor, rápido, rápido, por favor. Rápido.
Clear.
Señor, dígame qué pasa.
Es todo lo que dice.
That's all he's been saying. It means rebirth. Rebirth of what? You said he was blind.
Yes, he was.
Can you show me where it landed?
Este es el sitio. Be careful. Cuidado, por favor. Con cuidado. Be careful.
Too late.
Did you have was there like a formula that you kind of stuck to get as much production value out of that?
Absolutely. Kieran and I basically, at times we were shooting like it was TV in a sense that, we shot up to 30 setups a day. We tried in advance of going out, we basically staged all of our scenes in these moving master shots. But yeah, we did like these mud maps where we'd basically mask out where the actors would be, and we rehearsed it, because we just didn't have time to screw around. So we had to be really specific. And even then we still ran out of time and had to compromise. But I think that's a really good way to approach low budget shooting, is to kind of not do too much coverage.
Also, the more pre, the better, really.
Yeah.
We ended up scheduling everything from lighting to second camera to everything. Like, we had no luxuries on this show, whereas some people would carry a second camera maybe more than they needed for a couple of days. We couldn't do that. We literally had to sit down and say, on this day we need 2 cameras and a Steadicam, and we need the 12K or the 6K light. There was no room for having extra gear than what we needed on top of, which meant, more pre for us. And we had to make smarter decisions.
Did you ever find that you had to, because you were limiting yourself to whatever equipment, did you find that you were struggling to find light, or?
No, it wasn't me being limited by light. It was working within our limitations, I guess. I already knew that was the limitation, and that would come down to creative decisions with Marc and I, and I'd say, well, look, this is how much of this field we can legitimately show if we were to light it. Are we able to work around it with our angles, which is what we sort of talked about a lot.
We had all the lights we needed, we just didn't have time to put them up.
Yeah, actually that's very true.
You can look at them, they're in the back of the truck. There's a 12K in the back, but no, you can't have it. We need 5 guys to put that up. It's manpower. Manpower is your greatest enemy with indie filmmaking.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, over here. How did you decide that this was the story that you wanted to commit like 3 to 5 years of your life to tell? How did you narrow it down to this one and say, yes, this is the story we're going to tell?
Whatever story Shane was interested in giving me money to make. There was actually, there was another film that I pitched them, and the opening scene of that had a US soldier in a burnt out bus in Iraq finding a baby with 3rd-degree burns all over it, and the investors read that and they said, fuck this, no. Just do the other one that's really expensive, just strip it down. So, and the story obviously has a lot of personal elements to me. As you heard Shane talk about it, it's a story about redemption, and that's a theme that I chase a lot in my work, and definitely working with Cheyenne as well, and Gabe Dowrick, we crafted a script that was integrally just grounded on the emotional struggles of the character, each of the characters in the story.
Yeah, I just want to ask, what were the biggest challenges you faced making an Australian independent feature now that we're in 2015? What was the biggest challenge you faced?
I guess time, but Dallas Buyers Club shot in 30 days and we shot in 30 days. So I think we're pretty lucky in that sense, but our vision was much bigger than what if anyone else tried to make this film, anyone of repute, it would probably cost $20 million, So that was the thing, was like reining in the vision. It's like, yeah, we want to shoot a giant scene where a meteorite, has made a massive crater and everything's smoking and these FBI agents are coming through, and that's what you end up with. It's like you have to really scale it back and just focus on and it's like the old Jaws story. It's like the shark wasn't working. Well, we didn't have time to dig a deep enough hole, so we just had to suggest it essentially. So that was the biggest challenge, was just reining in the vision and not making it overly ambitious.
Can you tell us a bit about the avenues to getting to this stage of it? Like outside of Terminus, there's a lot of pedigree that comes behind it, and you've obviously written the idea and whatnot. But for investors, how do they come to you and say, "Hey, this is a bloke that we want to ride with"? And yeah.
You mean career-wise?
Yeah, exactly.
I think I've been busting my ass for 15 years on music videos and commercials and short films. I've made quite a few shorts that have toured the festival circuit. And I guess you do that sort of thing long enough, and it doesn't matter how small the budget is of the thing that you're doing. You build a lot of kudos in the industry, because that's what no one looks down on you in this industry. Particularly in Australia, they admire it. No matter what you want to do, no matter how subtle it is or humble it is, people will appreciate that, and they'll. I think Shane was one of the people that none of this would have been possible without him. In that kind of Francis Ford Coppola, George Lucas relationship, where you have one person that's supporting another. That is very rare here in this industry. But I mean, you kind of see it with the Blue Tongue guys, and they work as a collective. But you really need somebody to give you a leg up. Somebody that's been watching you for years, and everything I've put online or sent Shane, he's watched and he's digested, and he's been able to look past the limitations of any of the budgets that I had on my short films and say, here's somebody that I think could tell a story that I might want to see. It was only because he thought that it was something that him as an audience member would want to see. My style or vision or whatever you want to call it, applied to a science fiction story that made this happen. Yeah. No worries.
Hey guys.
Hey.
Just wondering, what were the major challenges with shooting American Story in Australia? Especially, I saw in the previews and stuff, all the exteriors and whatnot.
That, like the setting and the vehicles. The vehicles was the biggest thing, because road closures. And we have quite a few car scenes, but as soon as you start doing things like with traffic control, it just becomes a nightmare. And then you've got lights hanging off the sides of the cars.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
You need a low loader, and if you want to tell them the story about the low loader, for instance.
Yeah. Well, for one, we managed to secure a route which we could actually drive the low loader around and actually not have to do sim trav. And so we got in all excited, rigged a few lights to it, and we went around this little small town, and it went around the first corner and hit a speed bump, and the whole piston blew out or something. And then we're reduced to doing sim trav again. So
the low loader was fucked.
Yeah. So yeah, that was.
Do you want to tell everyone what sim trav is?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So for those who don't know,
Sim trav's this.
Yeah. So it's simulated
You
travel.
move that light, and I'll pretend like I'm driving. And
Yeah.
put a camera right there. That's
Literally, you'd put a car in a studio, say, and pretend it, make it look like it's driving. So you're simulating travel without it actually moving, using lights and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And it is a bit challenging, especially when you're not, you don't have that in your schedule to do sim trav. You're not really prepared for it. So
Yeah, we didn't have time to put up green screens. The reason we needed to do sim trav on that scene was naturally because the car was busted. We couldn't drive it. So at night it's easy to do because you can pan lights, but during the day, if you're doing a
this is more
daytime
almost
driving
anyway.
scene,
Yeah.
you either shoot it really tight like there, or you need green screen. We just didn't have the time for that.
But I guess another challenge of the whole American thing was actually finding exterior of a house or exterior of buildings, because a lot of Australian buildings have a certain architecture to them that's a dead giveaway, like the old hangover roofs and stuff. So the hero house is the main David's house is actually it's a house way out in Bathurst.
Yeah,
Bathurst.
Oberon, near there.
And we actually had to clad it. We had to get the guys to put cladding over it, and the art department didn't have budget as is. And then we're like, guys, can you clad this? We can't find any other locations. And they're like, well, you know.
So they actually took the facade of the house and they put old American timber facade, like 2 inches thick over the top of it, and it looked weathered and aged. And they did such a beautiful job and planted American style plants in the front yard.
So when is it going to be released, and where do you think you're going to do the distribution? Is it going to go to the movies, or is
It's currently beginning its festival run, so we're playing at the Madrid Nocturna Fantastic Film Festival. I said that the wrong way around, but it's a fantastic film festival in Spain, and it's playing at the London Sci-Fi Film Festival. It's been picked up by a local distributor, Umbrella Entertainment. They haven't announced when they're going to release it, but I think they're aiming for like September, because it's like after the American summer movie season, and any other time you get lost. In terms of our American distribution, that hasn't been finalised yet, but it's in the process. So we're looking forward to some good news soon. And these days with the demands of distribution, you kind of want to release day and date across the globe to combat piracy, because films like Terminus and Infinity and Wormwood get raped by piracy, and they're all good films that deserve to be seen by an audience, Yeah.
Hi, sorry. Just kind of going back to the whole it being American theme thing. When you conceptualize stories, do you think of it in terms of Australian stories or American stories, just because it's more commercially viable? And how does that kind of shape the kind of stories you want to tell?
I was just as open to making an Australian set film, but as I said, the investors wanted to make an American set film. If Terminus had to be set in Australia, it would be completely different thematically. Terminus deals with America's involvement in the war in the wars in the Middle East, and their antagonistic relationship with Russia at the moment, and a kind of a pot-boiling political situation that's developing. And also veterans affairs. A couple of the characters are people that have been mortally, really badly wounded, and essentially the themes that envelop that. So it would have been a completely different story had it, been set here, but I think it could have been done. Yeah. Would have just changed thematically slightly.
Yeah, this is more of a personal question, I suppose, but I'm not sure how large a scale of things you've worked on before, but this is obviously something quite significant in terms of how you cope with perhaps the weight of expectation or having to deliver on something, letting people know, how did you deal with that if it came up at all, or just things like that?
Most of the pressure came in pre-production, as Tim would attest to, because when you're conceiving the film, it's all about the possibility of what it can be. Then pre-production is about the reality of what you're actually going to do, sinking in. By the time you start shooting, you've come to terms with it. So pre-production is really the time where you're losing sleep, and Kieran and I were working 12 to 16 to 18 hours a day storyboarding, and trying to conceive how we're going to do it. Then the locations would change because the location would fall through, and that kind of breeds a certain anxiety that your pregnant wife at home is struggling to deal with. Yeah, my wife was pregnant at the time, but so I think pre-production is the hardest, and then shooting is quite fun, because there's nothing you can do to change things. You kind of evolve, you adapt a little bit to what's going on, to the challenges such as weather and stuff. We got flooded out one day, but you can only do what you can do.
Yeah, I guess just approach it like any other project you've done before, and you know, obviously you can only do as well as you can, and I mean that sounds cheesy, but I guess you just got to focus on each smaller step in the grand scheme of things, and that'll sort of soothe the anxiety of a big project. I guess the reason you're actually doing a film is because someone's trusting in you, and you've got to kind of just trust yourself to do a good job, and just, you know, forget about all the expectations and just do what, you know, what you do, I guess.
Yeah, the only major difference is, like, between doing a short film and a feature is it's a marathon. So it's the same skill sets that are applied, the same concerns, but it's a marathon. So you have to pace yourself. You can really burn out, like, you know, or drink yourself into a state of oblivion too early.
Hi guys. First thing is the film looks great. Can't wait to see it.
Thank you.
And my actual question is, because you've picked the sci-fi genre, what was the process you went about doing visual and practical effects?
Doing 99% of it practical. So we employed Odd Studios to create our meteorite organism, and they did it for real, and the tentacles that you see, and I don't want to spoil too much, but you know, there's a lot of organism growth within the film, and there was a really large set piece, a pod that we had to create, which was built completely, you know, and they were the single largest expenses of the film, was creating it practically. And in some senses it does have that kind of 80s feel to it, but I think in a way it's more charming. Like, when I watch the film, the shots that leap out to me are the CG ones, you know, and they kind of stick out more. I can buy the rubbery tentacle quite easily. But yeah, that was the main thing, was trying to get as much real as possible, because we didn't have a lot of time for post either. Yeah.
Anyone else got some questions for us? Nope. Thank you very much. Do you guys want to say anything else? You want to tell us?
No, I think that would be indulgent.